Logan Gelbrich. I think I've pronounced it right. Tell me if I haven't, brother. But if we met you at a dinner party, how would you introduce yourself?
Oh man, like my job and whatnot.
Well, however.
Yeah, yeah, I guess the point of conversation is that I'm an entrepreneur. Uh, the way in which I'm an entrepreneur is I own a brand of gyms out here in the Los Angeles area called Douche, and yeah, strength and conditioning coach, former athlete, and sort of now author. And really what I'm most excited about teaching is leadership and organizational culture. So I do a lot of consultancy work, and we'll get into it all, but basically I think that all of the specific things that we're doing, the specific sports that people play, the specific jobs they have, the specific industries they're in, are sort of just petri dishes, for development. They're little vehicles to provide some context for development. And I'm obsessed with development. And it doesn't matter what kind. And
Where did
so,
that obsession come from?
well, a specific place. I mean, as a 5-year-old, I wanted to be the best baseball player in the world, and so I did that for the next 20 years. And you start to understand what we now know as like these universal ideas. There's a reason why if you watch an interview with, Owen Franks or Michael Jordan or whoever, athlete it is that you're watching at the pinnacle of their career, it's the reason, there's a certain reason why they're talking about very basic, non-specific things like commitment and resilience and this work ethic, the sort of mechanics of performance. And it sort of teaches us this lesson, and I think we've all been sort of asking these questions for thousands of years, and our work just becomes a great tool to dive into those important questions.
Yeah. How did Douche Gym start? Because I know I wanted to go deeper into culture and leadership there, but I was like, cool. So let's just get some background on how Douche started initially.
Yeah, Deuce had really humble beginnings. When I got done playing baseball, I went to my then former collegiate strength coach, Stefan Roche, and he was an early CrossFit flow master, accomplished strength and conditioning coach at the NCAA level. And I said, hey, I'm going to move back to Los Angeles, where I'm from. And I had this idea, this business plan that I'd like to share with you that's basically a training facility. It's a place where regular people are sort of treated like athletes and coached, not unlike how you coach us. And I said, is there anyone there in Los Angeles that I can learn from? And he gave me two great bits of advice. The first one was start right now. And he said, you'll never be ready. He goes, just literally be one day ahead of the person that you're coaching and just keep doing that. And I remember hearing that from him and thinking that was insane. But he was like, I'm not kidding you. Go to the park, and if someone doesn't know how to squat, you teach them to squat, and then you look up the next thing you need to teach them, and then so on and so forth. And that encouragement was big. The second thing he told me to do was to reach out to a guy called Andy Petronic, who started Petronic Fitness a couple decades ago, but in the process of starting his gym, became the 9th ever CrossFit affiliate. And that could have been the most important blessing in my fitness journey, because I could have been an intern anywhere. I could have washed the bathrooms anywhere, but it just so happened that I landed at what probably was at the time the only, I don't want to say the only, the most serious business run CrossFit gym in the country. And it wasn't about CrossFit, still isn't. But Andy had a clear vision about what it is that he was selling there. And I just really fear who I could have become if I was at somebody's hobby, you know, and that was big.
Yeah, especially after being at Douche, it's well run. And the coaches are good. Everyone knows what they're doing. It runs without you, which is great. There's a lot of culture, there's a lot of leadership. All the sessions are good. Everyone's happy. The clients are happy. So, yeah, obviously good on you for that. A lot of 99.9% of fitness facilities, as we know, turn into an absolute mess when the owner's not there.
Yep.
My own gym included at some points. So you go on a lot about culture and leadership. And I mean, I downloaded your ebook on culture and leadership. I still use that now with my team, and we go through the questions on rite of passage, hierarchy and stuff like that as well during our team meetings. So thanks for that. But where was that like golden moment or that time where you really understood that culture and leadership were super important for a fitness business?
Well, it's funny you asked that because it wasn't in a fitness context. And this is the idea that I'm talking about of skill transfer, which is I'm so interested in systems and how they work. And then if they can work in one place, that they might be able to work in another place. And the moment was very specific. It was the first orientation meeting at the University of San Diego where I played baseball. And the context is this: I'm a new guy, freshman, scared to death, sitting in a room with 29 other of the best baseball players in their discipline, sitting in chairs, awaiting for the head coach to arrive. And the meeting essentially is a rules meeting. It's a set the tone for the year meeting. It's an expectations meeting. It's orientation, really. And for whatever reason, I feel very grateful that I had this perspective. When I watched the head coach come in, I realized in that moment that he and his entire livelihood depended upon our ability to produce unique results. And it was so clear because it was another level. It wasn't like high school. It wasn't like the showcase scene. It wasn't like club ball. Like in collegiate baseball, you need to win now. And that is very clear. And for whatever reason, I put myself in his shoes as a freshman as he was talking to us. And I realized that this guy can literally do more or less whatever he wants, right? All the rules are made up. He could force the whole team to wear their pants a certain way, whether facial hair is legal or not, or what time weights were, all of these, the colors, the vernacular, everything was his choice. And so that had to be run through a filter of, well, these choices need to be made in a way that support the highest performance possible. And that means everything matters because we're competing against people who will do anything to beat us, right? And it was in that moment that I realized that's exactly how you can and maybe should run a company. And so culture is the thing that took that, I would say, good Division I college baseball program into a great one, you know, a top 25 team into a top 5 team in the country was our culture. And what I realized in those 4 years later after that meeting was that the culture at a high performance level does the job of leadership. It's a collective expression of leadership, meaning our culture led better than he could, right? We resolved issues, we held accountability, we got results, we reconciled failures better than any individual could. And that created this sort of self-fulfilling, self-sustaining system that could outperform any group of talented individuals that were led only in a top-down fashion. And that stayed with me forever, you know? And so when you get into business, it's not like winning and losing, or it's not like war, life or death, but it's a different kind of accountability, a different kind of feedback, right? There's dollars and cents, and you're competing against other people who are trying to, so to speak, beat you. And so I couldn't then unknow that great high performance culture will beat great individual leadership 8 days a week. And so then it becomes, well, how do I reverse engineer that? And that's sort of what you read about and what the folks that take the courses read about and learn about, et cetera.
Definitely an interesting perspective. A lot of business coaches or people in fitness talk about sales and marketing and strategy, and the most fundamentals of a successful business is the culture and the leadership at the top. Without that, it's not really going to matter what your sales is like or what your marketing is like, because the internal workings and mechanics of the business are fucked, which is not great. So I remember scrolling through Instagram a while ago. I was like, oh, he's this functional coach. Like, he looks interesting. And then in every tagline, there's hold the standard. And I was like, cool, hold the standard. That's kind of like a cool little line there. What does hold the standard mean to you? Obviously, the founder of the term. And can you give me a bit of background on it?
Yeah, it's just a cool little line. It's just a hashtag. I'm just kidding.
There's no cool little hashtags with you. Everything has meaning, and everything is deep to the nth degree.
Yeah, everything's deep, has a meaning. So hold the standard. Yeah, I think a lot of people misunderstand what that means. A couple things that it isn't. It's not just a cool line. It's also not this projected bravado, egotistical thing that says, well, this over here, this Douche thing is the standard. Like, take note. That's not what it is either. It's actually a model for development, and it's a really beautiful model if folks take the time to understand it. And so the standard then is a synonym or a representative of perfection, idealism. When we built the gym, I always thought, I want to build a place that represents idealism. And then every individual who entered the place would feel as if they had to play up to their best self. And so the standard, just as its definition is sort of perfection, idealism, a mental representation of what ideal is. And then what we know about performance is all performers are trying to achieve perfection. Every swing I took as a baseball player was an effort to mimic a perfect swing. You know, no marksman tries to take a B- shot, right? You try to take the perfect shot. Any skateboarder is trying to nail the perfect expression of a kickflip, right? That is the standard. Now, what we know about marksmen and skateboarders and baseball players is that there's a lot of failure there or deviation from the standard. Same thing. If I give you the standard, allegedly, of what the clean and jerk looks like, and you go out there on the stage and you clean and then try to jerk your weight, every weightlifting coach is communicating what? These deviations from the standard, right? And so every performer is trying to achieve this standard, but what happens is reality happens. And reality is someplace short of the standard. Now, to hold the standard then is to represent the role of leadership, which I can define for you in a second, but basically the space between reality and the standard. It's sort of saying, I will be responsible for that distance, that gap between where we are now and where it is that we're trying to go. And that begs the sort of question, like, this process, does it ever end? And the answer is no, right? And so we are in constant pursuit of holding the standard. We're saying that we will be responsible for that. And that is ultimately leadership.
So when did that come about? Was it just like having a few beers with the boys and then you were like, oh, cool, hold the standard? Or was it something you just, came up with it on workout? Or like, how does that even come into your head?
Yeah, I mean, so to be fair to myself, I think my academic level understanding of these concepts is sort of patchwork that happens later. And that's always how it happens in academia, right?
Yeah.
I reference Anders Ericsson's work a lot, right? And he's the godfather of deliberate practice, basically the observation of how masters get great at what they do. It's important to recognize that book is written and those concepts are given names and colors and categories and stages based on observations in life.
Yeah.
Right. They have to observe the pianist play the piano and then interview him or her and then reverse engineer it. Right. So we see it first in nature. When you spend 20 years trying to be the best in the world at a sport, you, like water, find best practices. Right. And so holding the standard and that concept was like something I've been doing, or anyone that has been doing, if they're trying to do something difficult to the best of their ability. The question then becomes, can you understand it in a general way? And I think that's what happened, right? It's like, I understand that this is how performance works. Now adding a name to it and building a model that's universal, that's sort of like taking it one step further.
Yeah.
You know,
Cool.
so yeah.
So when I was on my Logan deep dive, I was like, cool, he's got this thing called Coaches Prep 101. Maybe this would be good for my coaches. And I signed up. It was great. All my team did it, which was fantastic. And I was just wondering what the kind of history of the Coaches Prep 101 was and why you founded it. Because I know there is some criteria to become a coach at Douche where you have to do the Coaches Prep. And I thought that was super interesting. That comes back into the culture and the leadership thing as well. Could you go and riff a little bit on Coaches Prep 101, how it came about?
Yeah, so since the gym started in the park in 2011, like since the first day, Coaches Prep existed, right? Like we were developing coaches as long as we were coaching athletes. And the reason for that is the vision of this thing cannot be as small as, you know, any one person, right? And so I was not interested in building a company that was only as big as me or the founders of the company. And so development is a cornerstone of what we are. Now, that being said, there's a couple reasons. Coaches Prep serves two main purposes. One is it's a rite of passage, meaning we don't hire people. We put them through a certain rite of passage. The best teams in the world have this, whether it's formal or informal. The quick and dirty sort of reason for that is that the best group dynamics in the world have unique levels of trust and willingness. Okay, and so you can do things that other teams can't when you have that. Developmental, we call it adaptive work, is only possible if you have both trust and willingness. An easy example for people to understand is like therapy. Have you ever been to therapy? You know, therapy only works if you have trust and willingness in that system. If you're not willing to do the work, or you're not in a trusting environment with the therapist, you're kind of just going to spend a bunch of money and nothing's really going to happen, right? And so we are built on these two elements, trust and willingness. This rite of passage is critical for that. So basically, we're the hardest gym to get a job at. I think that we're also the highest performing gym in that way. For those reasons, I should say. The second thing with Coaches Prep is it serves this role of endless development. We know that skill acquisition plateaus, right? We start to get into an autopilot mode. If anybody's not clear about that, you can take a look at your driving ability. It's a great way to look at it, right? Like you've done a lot of driving in the last year, but have you gotten better at it? And the answer is probably no. And the reason for that is the elements that drive development, skill acquisition, are very specific. They need to stretch us. They need to provide feedback, etc. And if you can drive well enough to make it to where you're going, and you can text while you're doing it, you're not going to get better at that skill, right? Coaching, however, since it's our livelihood, we cannot afford to plateau in that development. And so Coaches Prep is an effort to remove the stagnation of growth that happens for coaches. Most coaches are not getting better by coaching the 6 and 7 a.m. classes, for example. So it serves two main purposes for us.
Awesome. So with all that in mind and everything you've ever done, what would be your biggest accomplishment? Would it be the book or the gyms or surviving COVID-19 or getting an Audi? I don't know, whatever you're at.
Oh, man.
Man, that was a nice car. When I saw it, I was like, damn.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I had a bicycle for like 8 years. And then one day I just took like 5 Ubers and then I just bought a car. But whatever. That's
a bicycle. That's so Logan. That is so
Logan. So hands down, in my opinion, the pinnacle is building something that gets better on its own. right? And I really believe that we've built a company that will get better over time because of its own nature, not because of me.
Yeah, I'm writing that down. I've got a full page of notes here, which is some great stuff, some great learnings. So what do you wish you knew when you first started out as a gym owner? Like the number one thing.
Like what should one do as a gym owner?
No, what's like the number one thing you wish that you knew when you first started? Yeah. Yeah.
Understood.
My Australian accent is probably killing it on this
No,
audio.
you're good. What do I wish that I knew? Let me switch rooms so we don't lose the sound here.
Yeah.
It was impressively loud. Okay, so, dang, what did I wish that I knew? The first way I want to answer this question is not very helpful, which is, I guess maybe there is something helpful in it. We did some learning as we went, surely, but I do think that Deuce was largely an execution of a plan. And that on the surface level doesn't feel very helpful or inspiring to someone who's listening.
Yeah.
But I think the lesson inside of there is, if you really want to do this at a high level, you have to treat it as such. And I think a lot of people get into this business because they love it, which is fine. But you loving fitness has almost nothing to do with your ability to execute on this business. You know, and we make a massive distinction about this in my business prep course, which is sort of this distinction of like understanding why. And the why question is like all over the internet. Like, what's your why? I don't mean your why. No one gives a shit about your why right now. Okay. If you're in business, the why that you need to figure out is, why should someone participate with your company and not another company? And that can't be murky or muddy or unclear or whatever. And so for us, that was clear. We're going to put all of our eggs into this coaching basket, so that when people say, hey, what's the point of coming here? We say, hey, guess what? Fitness is free. It's always been free. You pay for this gym to be coached better than you've ever been coached within a plane flight of here, period. And then you have a very compelling message out into the world. So sort of dodging your question, but it's sort of like you must have one thing that makes what it is that you're offering compelling, and it better not be price.
Yeah. Interesting. I like it. Yeah, definitely dodged the question, but that was good. Logan, besides all the gym and fitness stuff and staying alive and guns and stuff in America, what are you curious about at the moment?
Well, the developmental stuff that I just spoke with you about is sort of the edge of my work right now. You know, the Hold the Standard Summit, the internal goal for that is that the majority of attendees are not fitness people. Mm-hmm. And that's at about 50%. And the reason for that is my biggest interest is in adaptive leadership and organizational culture right now. And can I communicate what, in my opinion, is the most important message of our time to people regardless of industry? And that was a bit about like what the book is about. And it's a bit about where my work is going with the mentorship and consultancy. It's like, you know, folks who are in marketing or folks who are in design, folks who are photographers and in businesses that have nothing to do with, you know, the squat, bench, deadlift. Can we really build something that will get better over time? And that's my biggest interest.
Compelling. I like it. Everything you say really rolls off the tongue. It's nice and smooth. So I just want to get into the Go Right book. So your mentor is Carol Dweck, is that right?
I wish I had a personal relationship with Carol Dweck. I just bought probably 300 copies of her book. Carol Dweck is the author of a book called Mindset, which is the only sort of book that you have to read before joining Coaches Prep. Dr. Kara Miller is my mentor. Yeah. She's pretty remarkable. She was a professor of mine at the leadership school at the University of San Diego, and friend, and she wrote the foreword of the book. Really important person to me. Yeah.
Awesome. So how did Go Right come about? Was this all just interlinked in the culture and leadership stuff, and you wanted to have like a piece out there?
A bit. Going Right is mostly a personal insight. And here's how it came about. I got done with baseball and I should have been screwed. Like, I should have been screwed in the real world, because there's nothing about hitting and throwing a baseball that shows up in business. Zero. Right? And so I was sort of acutely compelling in this sport, but no experience in the real working world. Like, I've still to this day never made a resume. There's a lot of reasons why I should be experiencing a lot of trouble in the adult world, so to speak. But when I got out of baseball, I sort of had this weird experience where I felt a remarkable sense of calm, and that I felt extremely prepared for whatever it is that I was going to do next. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't even have the idea of the gyms yet. And so I had to explain to myself, and then ultimately, because I think this is so important, to everyone who would listen, that there is a unique utilitarian advantage to pursuing your peak expression in anything. And that there was something about, and I didn't know how it worked yet, but I sort of had to reverse engineer it. There's something about that pursuit that afforded an advantage that you couldn't replicate anywhere else. Like, I felt like I was at an advantage because I tried and failed at something at a high level over people who were sort of trying to mitigate risk everywhere in their life. And they were just trying to not be in trouble, do the right thing, and like get a good job, and just like follow the leader kind of thing. And I really believe that there are no shortages of emotional reasons to do this, pursue your dream or your whatever peak expression. But I figured, you know what, if it would be a really great challenge, and I would love to meet the version of myself that could figure this out, it being a bulletproof, emotionless, logical justification for pursuing your dreams. If you could do that, then basically all these people that would say, hey, I totally would, like, man, my passion is this thing. I would love to do X, Y, and Z, but I got to be reasonable. I got to be smart. I got whatever. Because look, if it was the emotional thing, then, you know, we're one pep rally away from being what we want to be in our life. And everybody loses that motivation. And so I was like, you know what? If I can lock this thing up, then basically I could write a book where, yeah, people could still concede their best self, which is what most adults are doing. But they couldn't tell me that they were being smarter for having done so. And so I was like, I want to write that book.
You're a deep man. So many deep concepts. Logan, is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Damn. You know what's messed up is, if I'm ever like driving around, I think of that question all the time. I'm like, that is a great question. And then now I got to figure out what my answer to it is. Here's the thing. I wish that we, meaning like people that are out in the world trying to do something hard, could help normalize dissatisfaction and failure. And the reason why I say that is I think one of the main reasons why people don't do hard things that they really want to do is because they don't have a relationship with dissatisfaction or failure. Meaning, pick the archetype of success, whoever that is, you know, Jay-Z or your sports hero, whatever it is. I really believe that amateurs and scared people that don't try difficult things, they believe that individuals like that just have a lot of success, and they try things and it works out. And then therefore, when they try things and it doesn't work out, it's sort of like a signal. It's like a message like, hey, you're not one of those. And as long as this story is perpetuated that there are successful people and then there are normal people, or there are normal people and then there's this other, of course you wouldn't try. Of course you would stay in your lane, right? And what people need to understand is that it's built into the hold the standard model. Built into trying to be excellent is this permanent awareness that you're not there yet. So it's almost as if the people who are out there pursuing excellence, Beyonce, whoever, whatever example you want, right, are confronted with failure maybe more often than anyone else. And if you don't know that, you don't think you're on the right path. You think that you shouldn't continue. And so I think that, like, if you can do at least what we're trying to do at Douche, like, we're trying to build a company where negative feedback is sexy. Like, you are craving and hungry for negative feedback. Why? Not because you're a masochist and you hate yourself, but because you're smart enough to realize that it's that type of information that's going to make you better, right? If you're curious about that gap between where you're at and where you're trying to go, I mean, that's all information that's telling you, hey, I'm not here yet, and this way, that way, and the other way. If you're curious about that, then you have the roadmap forward, right? But self-protecting, scared people, they don't even want to acknowledge that that's there. Right? They're trying to accentuate the positive. They're trying to flex in a way that's like false perfection. And you just can't get better that way. I mean, it's not my opinion. It's just, I wish it was different.
Yep. I agree, man. There's some super deep topics here. So final question. If you could have a meal with any 3 people, dead or alive, who would they be?
Damn. I would love to have a whiskey with Winston Churchill, maybe a steak. A living one, Nolan Ryan. I only had one favorite player. He's a baseball player, Nolan Ryan. He's a bad dude. Legend, competitor. And who's the other one? Maybe my grandfather. I didn't really know my grandfather. He died when I was really young. But he was a ball player, and I hear he was a great guy.
Awesome. So why Winston Churchill?
You know what? I just want to know. I'm obsessed with extremes, Like, I think we can learn a lot from the extremes.
I couldn't tell.
That's right. And, to be in the seat, in the fire with sort of human existence and the balance, it's just a really, I don't know who else you ask that about, and Dwight Eisenhower is like the other one, but it's just like, I want to know, I just want to see what that's about.
So Logan, how do people find you? How do people learn more about you?
Yeah, I'm at Functional Coach on Instagram and Twitter. And, douchegym.com is like fully revamped. That's where all like the online education's at. There's 2,500 blogs up there, something short and insightful every single day.
Are you still writing them daily?
Yeah. Man. I got a little help now. Every now and then some of the other coaches contribute, but I've probably written like 2,300 of them. And my book is out on Audible right now. Like, it comes out like in 12 hours, but whenever people are listening to this, it'll be out. So look, reading's hard. People don't want to do it. Just let me read it to you. How about that?
Awesome. Did you read that yourself, or did you get someone else to read it?
Yeah, I read it. And Dr. Miller reads the foreword. So
that's really so cool.
Yeah.
I could ask you so many questions about the process of that, but we'll leave that for today. Thanks so much for jumping on, Logan. That was a mind bender.
Dude, thank you.
You'll have to listen back to that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.